Hi, this is Usha. Welcome to Rathod Science classes. Today in this lecture, we are going to discuss current affairs of 14th January 2021. In this lecture, we are going to discuss 7 topics which are very much relevant to UPSC. So let's get started with our lecture. So before seeing this first article, we are going to make a small announcement. So we launched this current affairs package course. So this will be very useful to clear prelims and also mains. So we are exclusively focusing on the current affairs. So we are giving current affairs based prelims questions and also mains questions. So if you are practicing these questions, this will be very helpful to clear both the prelims and also mains. As you all know, answer writing skills plays an important role to clear UPSC mains. So if you join this course, you will master the current affairs and you will practice in the prelims questions and also the mains question. And this course, it is for entire 1 year. So this course, it is highly beneficial and also economical as well. So if you want to join this course, for the details, the link which is given in the description box. So please visit that site. And if you see the first article, it mainly says that Afghanistan raises delay in India's acceptance of envoy. So this article is important regarding international relations, which comes under GS paper 2. So now let us have a brief discussion why it is in the news and also some facts regarding the India-Afghanistan relations. So context says that more than 3 months after Afghanistan announced its next ambassador to India, India has yet to grant its acceptance for this ambassador to India. So what happened more than from 3 months after Afghanistan already announced next ambassador of India, India did not give its response to that. So if you see the background regarding this, Afghanistan has not been had a full rank ambassador in Delhi since September 2018. So at that time, the ambassador of Afghanistan in India, he resigned unexpectedly in order to participate in the elections. So from September 2018 onwards, from Afghanistan has not had a full rank ambassador in New Delhi. So because of this, India which is delaying in its acceptance now. Now let us see some facts here. The first one is India's interest in Afghanistan. Afghanistan, it is very important for India both economically and as well as strategically because of its location. So Afghanistan mainly used as a gateway to the oil and also the mineral rich Asianic countries. So whenever we want to move or access to the Central Asian countries, we can go through via Afghanistan. So because of this, Afghanistan will act as a gateway to the oil and the mineral rich Central Asian countries. And we also came up with development projects in Afghanistan like Afghan Parliament, Zaran-Jaliram Highway and Afghan-India Friendship Dam, that is Salma Dam. Not only that, India also made investments in the different sectors like education, health, etc. in Afghanistan. And the next one is security interest. If you see in Afghanistan, there are many terrorist organizations that are having links with the international like Al-Qaeda, ISIS, etc. So already India is victim of the state-sponsored terrorism which is emanating from the Pakistan. So one important group, that is Haqqani network, which is present in Afghanistan, which is having the links with the Pakistan. So because of this, we have security interest as well regarding Afghanistan. So these are some important things that you should remember regarding this article. Now let us see the next article. Title says polio immunization drive postponed. So this article mainly focusing on polio. So this article will be important regarding prelims under GS paper 3, which comes under science and technology. Now let us see the context and as well as some facts. Here Union Health Ministry has postponed the polio immunization drive, which scheduled from January 17th. So because of some unforeseen activities, now here this scheduled immunization drive which is postponed. So if you see some facts regarding the January 17th, what is the importance of that day? It is a National Immunization Day. It is also called as Pulse Polio Immunization Program. So if you see some facts regarding this National Immunization Day, It is one of the 4 strategies that are recommended by the WHO, that is World Health Organization, mainly to eradicate the polio completely in India. And under this National Immunization Day, we conduct polio vaccination drive every twice in a year at a gap of 2 to 4 weeks. So at a gap of 2 to 4 weeks, we are going to conduct this immunization day, that is especially this polio drive. And under this polio, we are going to administer 2 types of vaccines. The first one is IPV, inactivated polio vaccine. Next one is oral polio vaccine. So if you're talking about this inactivated polio vaccine, so under this, it mainly related to the wild type of polio virus strain, which is administered in a combination of the other vaccines. So other vaccines include diphtheria, pertussis, tetanus, hemophilus, hepatitis B and influenza. And if you're talking about this oral polio vaccine, so first it will be administered and later on this IPV will be administered. So after once OPV, that is oral polio vaccine, which is administered to the children, and this IPV will be more effective. So it will increases the intestinal immunity in the children. Okay, so who are the children already immunized by this oral polio vaccine? So the second dose will be given, that is inactivated polio virus vaccine. So in that way, this IPV, it is more effective than compared to that of the oral polio vaccine in increasing the immunity in the intestines of the children. So if you see regarding the polio, it is one of the crippling and potentially fatal viral infectious disease. There are mainly 3 strains of polio that are identified. The first one is wild polio virus type 1, second one is type 2 and third one is type 3. So if you are talking about the treatment of polio, there is no cure, but they can be prevented mainly through immunization. Whenever we are giving vaccine to the children, they will develop the immunity against the polio such that this disease can be prevented, but there is no permanent cure for this polio. So the important strategy to prevent this polio here is to by mainly immunizing the children, okay? And we need to prevent this polio till there is a transmission between the children, that is stopping. So if you are talking about the transmission, that can be transmitted from the fake oral route. That means to the feces, it mainly contains some particles of the virus. So whenever there is a contamination of the food and the water with this virus, then it will be easily transmitted from one person to the another person. So this transmission should be stopped. And the next one is, after entering the virus into the children, first it will goes to the intestines, and in the intestine they will multiply rapidly. So after the multiplication of the virus, it will start affecting the nervous system of the body and it will finally leads to paralysis. If you see one important fact regarding this polio, India already received this polio-free certification by WHO, World Health Organization, in the 2014 after 3 years of 0 cases. So these are some important facts that you should remember. And now let us see the next article. Title says BSF unearths tunnel in Jammu and Kashmir. So this article mainly talking about border security force. So you need to remember some facts regarding the border security force. So if you open our syllabus of UPSC mains in the paper 3 under defense, you will see this BSF directly. So because of this topic will be very important. And the context says that the border security force unearthed a 30 feet deep and 150 meter long cross-border tunnel in Samba district, which is located in the state in the Jammu and Kashmir. Okay, now in the Jammu and Kashmir they found one tunnel. The tunnel here is 30 feet deep and 150 meter long, and this is the third tunnel which was found mainly by the border security forces till last November. So this is not the first one, this is the third one. If you see some facts regarding the border security force, it was established on the December 1st, 1965. So this BSF mainly guarding the India's land borders with the Pakistan and the Bangladesh. And they have the different wings like air wing, marine wing, artillery regiment, commando units, etc. And it is one of the central armed police forces. So under this central armed police forces, we have 7 security forces and which comes under the Ministry of Home Affairs. So this will be important. And those 7 security forces, they are, the first one is Assam Rifles, second one is Border Security Force, Central Industrial Security Force, Central Reserve Police Force, Indo-Tibetan Border Police, National Security Guard, Shastra Seema Bal. Okay, so these are the seven security forces in India which comes under Central Armed Police Forces. And if you see about this border security force, it is one of the world's largest border guarding force, and it is also first line of defense of Indian territories. So these are some important facts that you should remember. And now let us see the next article. Title says farm laws, their constitutional validity and hope. This article mainly talking about the constitutional validity of farm laws. So this article mainly gives some important dimensions regarding the 3 articles of our Indian Constitution. So we are going to discuss those articles in detail, and I will try my level best to make understand what is this constitutional validity according to this farm laws. Okay, and this article will comes under GS paper 2 under polity. So you can expect the analytical questions regarding the polity from this type of the articles. Now let us try to understand this article in great detail. So if you see the background, recently Supreme Court mainly appointed one committee with the experts. So these experts, they will going to negotiate with the both government and also the farmers, mainly to come up with the solutions. But on the stand of the farmers, what they say, they will not agree whatever the thing which came up by this committee, but less than the repeal of the law. That means the farmers, they want to repeal the law here. So if you are talking about the democracy, in the democracy, the dissent will also the one of the important part. So whenever there is a dissent which is given by the people, then only the lawmakers, then they can understand what are the problems that are facing by the people. Without a dissent, there is no full democracy. That means there will be partial democracy in the country. So recently, case filed in the Supreme Court regarding the constitutionality of this farm laws. So if the first important thing that you should remember, why these farm laws are challenged in the Supreme Court. The first one is Parliament has no legislative competence to enact the laws. So this farm laws or the agriculture which comes under the state list, though those are coming under the state list, here central government, that is Parliament, they went for the making of the law which is under the state list. So this is the first important thing. And the next one is regarding the voting of the farm bill. So voting of the farm bill, it is not done according to the rules of the house. So if you are talking about rules of the house, the recording of the votes with even one member demands, then there should be the recording of the votes that can be done by the presiding officer. So if you are talking about the Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, in Lok Sabha presiding officer, he is the speaker, and regarding the Rajya Sabha, he is the chairman, right? So what happened whenever the voting which is happening, that means whenever the voting of these farm bills is happening, if at all any member of the house who is demanding for the recording of the votes, they need to go for the recording of the votes. They cannot go for the voice vote. But what happened in the voting of farm bills in the Rajya Sabha, the deputy chairman, he not recorded the votes, but he mere went for the taking of the voice votes. Though even the member demanded for the recording of votes, here deputy chairman, he didn't go for that. So because of this, we can say it is a violation of the rules of the house, passing the bill by a voice vote but not the recorded vote. And the third one is Article 100. Under this Article 100, it mainly says that all questions at any sittings of either house, it may be Lok Sabha or it may be Rajya Sabha, it can be determined by majority of the votes of members who are present and voting, and this majority that can determine only through recording of votes but not voice votes. So Article 100 itself, it is one of the important provision of the Constitution. It also says that all the questions which are mainly present or which are mainly arised at the sittings of the either house, that may be either Lok Sabha or either Rajya Sabha. So whenever there is any question which arised, So that should be determined mainly by majority of the votes. So this majority of the votes mainly determined through the recorded votes, but not the voice vote. But in the Rajya Sabha, what happened? These laws, they are passed by the voice vote. So because of this, it is a violation of Article 100 of Indian Constitution. So in this context, what are the options which are present before judiciary? The first one is, we need to talk about the next important article, Article 122. So this Article 122 of Indian Constitution mainly protects the proceedings of the House from the judicial review. That means whatever the proceedings which are happening in the House that are out of the judicial review. Here judiciary cannot interfere in the proceedings. But these proceedings, they are mainly out of the judicial review based on the irregular procedure. So based on the procedure which is happening in the House, so in that regarding judiciary, they cannot interfere in the proceedings of the House. But here, whenever there is a violation of the Constitution is happening, that will not merely the irregularity of the procedure. That means whenever there is a violation of Constitution, then judiciary can interfere. So judiciary cannot interfere in the irregular, what is the procedure that is happening in the court. But if there is any violation of the Constitution, in this case, judiciary can compulsorily intervene in that. So if you see the Supreme Court judgment in the Raja Ram Pal case, what happened here? Supreme Court mainly said that proceedings can be challenged on the substantive grounds like violation of constitutional provisions. That means whenever in the proceedings which are happening in House, so whenever there is a violation of the Constitution in those proceedings, so in that condition, Supreme Court or the High Court or judiciary, that can intervene. So if you're talking about the passing of farm bills in Rajya Sabha, there is a violation of Article 100. So because of the violation of Article 100, we can say there is a violation of constitutional provision. So court now it can strike down the whole laws as requirement of Article 107 has not been fulfilled. So here the first option that is present before court here is court can strike down that Article 107 which is not satisfied. The third article you should remember here is Article 107. Article 107 says that bill shall not be deemed to have been passed unless it has been agreed by both the houses. That means both the house should agree, then only the bill that becomes an act. So here bill have not in fact which is passed by the Rajya Sabha because the majority had not been determined in accordance with the Article 100. So what happened? The majority mainly seen according to the voice vote but not the recorded vote. So because of this, it is violating the Article 100. So because of this, we can say Rajya Sabha has not passed this bill. So because of this, it is violating Article 107 again. So court can strike down this farm laws. And the second option that is present before court here is court may also invalidate the proceedings of Rajya Sabha and again send these three acts back to that house, that is a second house, and further proceedings that should be taken accordance with the constitutional provisions. So these are the some important things that you should remember regarding this article. Now let us see the next article. Title says terror trial. If you see the central theme, it mainly says that Pakistan's action against terrorists is welcome, but now here near enough. So this article mainly talking about UNSC speech and what are the important things which are discussed or which are highlighted in that speech by our External Affairs Minister. So this article will be important regarding GS paper 2 under international relations, and this topic will be important regarding mains, not from prelims. Now let us try to understand this article in great detail. So in United Nations Security Council speech, it is marking 20 years since the resolutions that announced a global commitment to war against the terror after US 9/11 attacks. So after US 9/11 attacks, we came up with the resolutions. And now this year it is marking the 20 years of that resolutions. So in this context, our External Affairs Minister mainly made some statements. The first one is we need the greater coordination between the counter-terrorism agencies which are present across the world. Because across the world we are seeing different terror organizations that are coming to picture. For example, we have ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Ansaruddin in Mali, Al-Shabaab in Somalia, Al-Shura in Nigeria, ISIS and Wilia, JEM, okay, Jaish-e-Mohammed, LET. So these are the some organizations that are not concentrated in one area but different parts of the world. So in this context, mainly to counter terrorism, we need greater coordination with this counter agencies which are present across worldwide. And the next one is we need to acknowledge that terror organizations, they use not only the extortion and the money laundering, but also they are using the drug trafficking, wildlife trafficking, such that they can raise their funds for their sustenance. Okay, so they will use mainly loopholes in digital security and anonymity, which are mainly one of the important key features of the blockchain technology. Whenever we are using blockchain technology, there will be the digital security that is present and also anonymity is present. So these are the some loopholes which are mainly used by this terrorist organization to access the finances here. So in this way, we can also think about what is the impact of technology on the terrorism as well. And the second important statement here is he made a clear reference to the Pakistan. Here he also said that in this context there is a need to link the FATF with the United Nations. And he also said that for the countries that willfully provide the financial assistance and which are acting as a safe havens and providing the 5-star treatment to the criminals and the terrorists, they to be held account for the terrorism. And the third important point here is he pointed to the countries that they need to allow the political and the religious affinities together. So whenever this political and the religious affinities, they are coming together and they are having the negotiations, they are having some discussions regarding this terrorism, terrorist, etc., such that they can make a right decision. So they can decide on the issues of the designation of the terrorist, blocking and unblocking of this terrorist organization. Because one example I want to say here is terrorists, mainly to spread their ideas, they will use some important organ, that is the religious sentiments. So these religious sentiments, they are mainly sponsored by the state itself. So in this way, state will also give the support mainly to promote the religious sentiments. For example, for the training, and also give some financial support to reside anywhere, and also give support to the arms and ammunition, etc. So this type of terrorism, it is called as a state sponsored terrorism. So whenever we are allowing political and the religious affinities to make the decision regarding whether to designate so and so organization as a terrorist or not, so and so individual as a terrorist or not, so in this way we can go for the effective management of terrorism. So these are some important things that you should remember regarding this article. Now let us see the next article. Title says building trust in vaccines. So central theme mainly says that by being accountable and transparent and countering misinformation, government can improve vaccine intake. So this article mainly talking about COVID-19 vaccine. So as we know, from 1 year onwards, we are fighting together against COVID-19. We are taking several precautionary measures, and even schools, colleges, universities, they are shut down. We also went for our shutting down of the international boundary, right? We also shut down the air flights, etc. So because of this COVID-19, we faced the health crisis and also economic crisis that is evident till now. So in this context, mainly to fight against this COVID-19, we need vaccine. So recently, there is a good news. DCGI approved 2 vaccine candidates of India, that is Covishield and Covaxin, for the emergency use authorization. So regarding these vaccines, now there is a spreading of misinformation that started. So whenever this misinformation that started spreading to the people they cannot come forward to take this vaccine. So the vaccine hesitancy will be increased. Mainly to decrease this vaccine hesitancy, we need to increase the trust among the people regarding the safety of these vaccines. So what are the steps to be taken by the government to increase the trust? That is discussed in this article. Now let us see those steps. So if you see the background, we are facing this coronavirus time. So it killed thousands of people and create the health crisis and economic crisis in the country. So in this condition, to fight against this coronavirus, we need vaccine. So recently in India, two vaccine candidates, Covishield and the Covaxin, they got the emergency use authorization from the DCGI. But there are some issues like there is a lack of transparency, insufficient information which is given by the limited health care professionals, and also there is poor understanding of vaccines. There is a limited health literature or literacy among the people. There is lack of public information. There is increase in the spread of misinformation, and also government seeming high-handedness in this COVID-19 vaccines. So these are the some important things that are leading to the distrust in the public regarding this COVID-19 vaccine. That is leading to the increase in the vaccine hesitancy. So in this condition, what can be done? We can increase the public confidence. And the next one is government and public institutions. They need to start by building open and participative framework such that it will build trust among the people. We need to engage and inform all the stakeholders who are involved in this vaccine distribution as also. And we need to create a national forum which contains the different stakeholders such that they can resolve the doubts of the people. We can go for the public education and the public information by using the large scale state and the local level networks. So those can be guided by scientific experts, communication and community specialist leaders, etc. And we can also go for the public figures to religious leaders. They can be used to bring the behavioral changes in the people regarding the attitudinal change towards this COVID-19 vaccine. So these public figures to the religious leaders, they need to be made as ambassadors in this process, like creating the awareness among the people. And we can also use local networks. For example, self-help to the faith groups. We can use the education institutions who are the people working in these education institutions, and also media to increase the awareness about this COVID-19 vaccine. So these are the some important steps that can be taken. Now let us see the next article. Title says two protests and false parallels. So this article mainly talking about the protest that happened in the USA and Hong Kong, and we are comparing those protests, how they are differing, and we can use this protest in as a case study or examples in your mains answer. So if you are talking about protest in the USA and Hong Kong, if you are talking especially regarding the USA, mainly this protest and the violence created by the support of Donald Trump. And if you are talking about America, it is one of the oldest and the largest democracy across the world. And because of this protest and the violence, we saw there is some of the destabilization, and the important reason behind this protest here is to create the destabilize the democracy in America. But you are talking about the second country, that is Hong Kong. So in the Hong Kong, this protest happened in the year 2019. So they mainly protested to protect their basic rights. Okay, basic rights are very important for the sustenance of the life. Without these basic rights, the people cannot sustain, right? So because of this, they are mainly protested to protect their basic rights, because there is an increase in the dominance of the China that is seen in the Hong Kong. So these are the some important case studies you can use in your mains answer. Now let us see the today's mains question. The constitutional validity of the farm laws has been challenged in the Supreme Court. In this context, what are the options before the judiciary? Elucidate. So we discussed about this question detailedly in the article which is appeared in the page number 6. So please read that editorial twice and try to answer this question, and answer should not be more than 250 words. By this we are concluding today. I hope you enjoyed this lecture. Please subscribe to my channel and don't forget to like, share and comment my videos. Thank you so much.